how to cook a perfect steak every time. I'm going to show you how I think it should be done. Whatever you think is fine. I have never met two people who think a steak should be cooked the exact same way from start to finish. I will show you the way that I cook a steak, and I cook a steak this way because if I cook it any other way, it is not as good. So I will show you how I cook a steak that I think is as good as you can cook a steak when you are just cooking a steak at home for yourself or for you and somebody else. You know, small time operation here. Not that many ingredients. So you go to the store. Step one, you decide you're going to have a steak, right? It's an impulse decision. We all go through it. We want the red meat. Okay, we're adults. When we get triggered for adult things. And an adult thing, an adult dessert, if you want to call it, is a steak. Now, you decide that you want a steak. You go to the store. Now, picking out a steak. Here's how you pick out a steak, okay? Here are some things that you're going to be looking for. You are going to be looking for a steak that is marbled well. What do I mean by marbled well? Marbling is the white part of a steak. So all that kind of those white dots that are speckled through a steak, that is what you want. The more marbling there is on a steak, the better. Now, if you're just starting off and you are like, I've never cooked a steak, or I cook a steak and I fuck it up every time, just go for something easy. Don't try and get fancy. Get like a ribeye. Get a New York. Get something that is, right there when you walk in to your Safeway or your Whole Foods or wherever you're shopping. Now, I'll show you the steak that I picked out. Here's the steak that I picked out today. Now, the reason I picked it out is because there's good marbling. Look at how flat this is. This is another thing that you want to look out for. This stuff like won't make or break your steak. And just so you know, I have washed my hands. Okay, do not start handling raw meat until you've washed your hands. But so this stuff isn't like make or break stuff, but this is stuff that since you get to pick out your steak, you want to look out for this. So see how this is like, it's not like an uneven surface. You see that? See how flat that is? That's going to cook really well on my pan because it's going to lay flat on there. So that's something you want to look out for. You want to look out for like nice big chunks of fat like this riddled throughout. This is all good stuff. The kind of fat that you want to watch out for, there isn't much on this one, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but it's called sinew. If you don't know what sinew is, look up sinew. Sinew is very, very tough. It's kind of clear looking fat. And sinew is a fucking problem. Sinew is going to make it, is going to take your pretty little steak and make it hard to eat because you can't render down sinew. So no matter how hot you get your steak, sinew is going to remain, and it's very chewy and tough, and you want to watch out for it. So what you want is fat that looks like this. Or like here's some fat that's like off a bigger roast, right? See this? It's just one little consistency. It looks like a little like block of cream or something, which it basically is. So when you're looking for a steak, those are some things to look out for. So get yourself a good steak, okay? Now we have ourselves a good steak, okay? Here's an example of the world's most famous cut and a pretty good one, right? This is like a choice, but it's a decent cut. And I got it from this butcher who's a very nice guy. Now, if you are just buying a steak from the store, here's where this is like my opinion. If you are buying a steak from a store and you want to do it my way, then get a steak with enough fat on the edge that you can trim some off, like this is a trimmed up ribeye, but a lot of times there's like a bigger chunk of fat kind of right here. Get that. You want a big chunk of fat that you can cut off the steak. Do not cut off fat from inside the steak. You are going to fuck the steak up. In my case, I asked the butcher at this grocery store that I went to cut me off some fat. So I have really high quality fat here in my hands. We are not going to use any oil. No oil. We're going to use very little butter. People get super carried away, put a shit ton of oil on a ripping hot pan and put a bunch of butter. We're not going to do it like that because that is bullshit. It's bullshit. You don't need to do it. You don't need the butter based to get a very buttery steak. And I will show you how to get the most buttery steak of your life without basting it. Okay? You don't need to baste it. If you are basting your steak and you have seen this video, then know that you are putting on a show. It is theatrics. You don't need to do that. Okay? So now, also at the store, here's what you need to do a steak like I do it. You need unsalted butter, obviously a steak, unsalted butter, salt, pepper, thyme, rosemary, and garlic powder. That's like 6 ingredients. It's pretty simple. Steak, butter, salt, pepper, thyme, rosemary, garlic powder. That's like 7 ingredients. Okay. If you have that, go home and get home. Once you are home, here's the next thing you do. You get your steak home. Now, if you bought your steak while you were out shopping, get the steak first. Because the longer time the steak spends out of the fridge, out of being cold, the better. We want this steak to get as close to room temperature as humanly possible before we put it on the pan. Why? Oh, also thickness of the steak. Okay? You want, this is like 1.25 inches, which is fine. If you do any thinner than this, see about how thin that is or thick that is. If you do any thinner than this, just know you're gonna have to cook your steak very quickly. This steak is thick enough that we don't need to cook it like super fast. But if you leave a thin steak on, you're gonna overcook it and you're gonna be chewing on this chewy ass steak. You don't want that, okay? So, you get home, okay? Now you're home. Salt and pepper. I have a pepper grinder right here. You are going to salt and pepper this thing. And like I said, you want it to come to room temperature. So what does that mean? That means there's a waiting game we're going to play here. So, and then you're going to press that salt into the steak, which I'm doing off camera. Once you have salt and peppered one side, you are going to do the same to the other. How much salt do you put on this? Well, I'll tell you. Because I put on less salt than most people, yet my steaks taste saltier than most people's. How is that? Well, you're going to find out. How much salt? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so I did that 17 times. That's how much salt. It should cover the steak. You pat that salt in, it should quickly disappear. Now, we're gonna let it rest because what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this steak continue to come to room temperature. It's getting hotter every second that it's out of the fridge. And that salt is gonna penetrate deeply into the steak. So when you come back, you're not gonna see any salt, yet the steak is going to be very salty because the salt has penetrated the steak. Also, you want to salt the edges of the steak too. This again is not a make or break thing. That is not going to be the reason your steak is great or sucks. But Basically, when you salt and pepper this thing, the salt and pepper that's left over on the cutting board, just mop that up with the side of the steak so you can get the side of the steak covered in salt and pepper as well. And now we're going to wait for 20 or 30 minutes, ideally, if we're not in a rush. 20 or 30 minutes. Just let the steak sit and don't fucking touch it. Okay, we've waited. Long wait, right? Turn on your heat on. Get your pan. Turn on the heat. Get your pan hot. People always say, you need a ripping hot pan. No, you don't. You literally should never use super high heat for a steak. The only time that you should do that is if you are reverse searing and you need to get a quick crust on your steak and the inside of the steak is already cooked. We are cooking this entire steak through. If you put it on high heat, you are going to fuck this steak up. You are going to get a gray band around the perimeter of the steak that is overcooked and chewy. The inside of the steak is not going to be cooked, or it's going to be overcooked, and you are going to burn the outside of your steak. Don't do that. Don't do that. So my thing goes from 1 to 9. I put mine at a little under 5. That's like 4.5. That's like medium heat. That's all you need. Do not get crazy with the heat. Maybe even like 5. Maybe 5. Say whatever you want. We'll look at the results. Okay. So, anyways, you have let your steak sit with salt and pepper on it for 20, 30 minutes or whatever. Take a paper towel. The reason your steak looks wet is because salt draws out moisture. Pat the steak down. Get the moisture off. Get the moisture off the steak. Nice and dry before we put it on the pan, baby. That is what we want. That's what we like. This is what we want. We deserve this, folks. We deserve a nice, juicy steak once in a while. So now we're getting the pan hot, medium heat. You don't need to get it hotter than that. It's going to take 5 minutes or something for this thing to get hot. I will say this. Make sure it's hot. Don't put the steak on until there's smoke coming off this pan. Do not put anything in the pan yet. Pan should be empty, free of everything and anything. Now, let's talk about butter. We're going to take a little saucer. Take a saucer. Get a saucer like this. That's microwave safe because we're going to microwave this. I'll show you how much butter I use. Okay. A lot of people will stick a half a stick of butter in the fucking pan and baste the steak. I'm going to show you how to get a more buttery steak using a fraction of the amount of butter and a better tasting too than basting. And from this day forward, you will know that basting is theatrics. See this? See this? Let's see. I'm going to get like that much butter. This is how much butter we're using. Okay. That's it. It's about how much butter you would use on 2 English muffins or 2 pieces of toast. That is all you need. You're going to put it in your saucer. Boom. Like that. Now, I eyeball this part. You're going to get your garlic powder, your thyme. Oh my God, I said rosemary earlier. That's wrong. So we're going to take our garlic powder, our thyme, and our parsley. Oh, by the way, it's going to get a little smoky in your kitchen. So if you want to turn on a fan or open a window, that is great. Garlic powder, thyme, and parsley. You can already see it kind of starting to smoke. So anyways, we have this. Now I eyeball it. But if you want me to tell you precisely how, I don't know. I'll just show you what I do here. So, boop, 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 boop. That's probably even a little too much parsley. I'm going to take a little bit out. I think that was a little too much. So that, oh, fuck. Almost dropped it. Thyme. About the same amount of thyme as you did parsley. Enough that when you pour it in, you start smelling it. But this is like a nice thick steak, so whatever. Yeah, that's fine. And then you're going to use about 1.5 to 2 times as much garlic powder as you did thyme and parsley. I don't know why I keep forgetting this. Is that enough? A little more. Do not be shy with the garlic powder. You can't really overdo it. It's just honest truth. Can't really overdo garlic. But anyways, I don't know. I don't measure it. This is what it looks like. There's garlic powder all up in there. There's thyme all up in there. You're going to microwave this for 30 seconds. Here's the fat. Now, I've had this fat on here for about 10 seconds. Here's all the oil already coming off this fat. Now, and here's our steak that's about ready to be put on. Here's the butter we made. This lovely butter that is going to be so good on the steak. I'm going to leave that right there. And we are going to let this render down. This will take a few minutes. Go ahead, grab your tongs. Oh, that's the other thing you're going to need. Tongs, obviously. Tongs. Look at that. Look at all that liquid. That, folks, is all fat. Yummy. Your situation should look like this. Your kitchen should smell amazing, and it's going to be pretty smoky. So now we're going to take this fat off. We have these little fat pieces that you will eat shortly. It's kind of like steak bacon. But now, look at all this oil we have in here. So that's all the oil you need for your steak. Now comes a time we've all been waiting for. Yes, sir. Getting real smoky in here. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to put the grill press on there. And that, folks, is going, oh my God, I can smell that pepper cooking. It smells so good. But anyways, that grill press is going to press down into the steak. It's going to make sure we get what's called a good crust. And a crust on a steak, folks, is when the outside of the steak starts to kind of caramelize and it gets brown. And you really want that because it adds a lot of texture to your steak. It also does a lot for the presentation. A steak that doesn't have good caramelization doesn't look appetizing, doesn't taste as appetizing either. So this bad boy is cooking. Good things are happening in this pan. I am going to next show you how to tell when the steak is done cooking. I eyeball everything. So they say basically, like, I don't know. Look, I'm just going to tell you. They say like different parts here, like down here is like well done, and this is medium, and this is medium rare, and this is rare. Like, I don't know. It should be squishy but not too squishy. So when you press this is how you know when your steak's done. When you press your fingers into it, there's a little bit of give, but then after there's that give, you feel a little resistance. That's medium rare. That's where you want your steak. That's how you're going to get it perfectly pink. Wall-to-wall pink. That's what we want. That's all we do here is wall-to-wall pink. Now I'm going to show you what the steak looks like. So look at that. That crust is pretty much done. It's even almost a little burnt. I probably had this with the weight on it for about 90 seconds. That's obviously all we need. And then you can press it and feel how done it is too. So that's, gosh, I don't know, maybe 15 more seconds it needs on that side. Like I said, it should have a little give. So I'll just kind of show you what my finger looks like. See that? That's almost done, but it's not quite done. See how it like really dips in there? This needs about 10 or 15 more seconds. And then I'm munching right here on our little steak bacon. There's a little snack for you. Little rendered down pieces of fat we used. All right, I just flipped it over. This is the other side. This is a little more like what we want. I would say this is like a little black-y. It's not burnt, but I like this color more, this kind of brown color. This side needs a little more, I can tell. Look at this pool of fat it's sitting in. Yeah. So this has been on here, I don't know, gosh, maybe 4 minutes. And again, here's where my heat is. I'm going to give this, say like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Looks good. So that 10 seconds can shut off the heat. Now here's the really fun part. Well, it's all really fun, folks, but this is another one of my favorite parts. So we're going to take the steak off, maybe flip it over to the side that was just on the pan. Then we're going to take that butter and, oh man, this is hard for me to do with one hand, but I'm going to get all that butter out. And then you see that butter just kind of sitting there. Now I'm going to kind of spread it around the steak while it's resting. Spread it around evenly. Make sure that nice thyme, parsley, garlic powder, butter. And it's just going to sit in there. And then here, folks, is one of my favorite parts. We're going to take all that fat. Now, that's a lot of fat. I might have to pour some of that off, but I might not too. So now, we cooked this for about 5 minutes. We're going to let it rest. And you got to let it rest. You got to let it rest for like 5 minutes. So just walk away for 5 minutes. All right, it's been about 4 or 5 minutes. You need to really let it rest for at least 5 minutes. Now, I'm about to cut this open, the steak, and we're going to see how we did. Because I can't cut the steak with 2 hands, I'm going to place this phone here while I cut it. I wish there was a way for you to see it, but here it is. This is my steak that I just cooked. Obviously, there's lots of liquid on it. Again, I haven't even cut the steak open. That's all just fat that rendered off. Now I'm kind of like mop it up while I'm eating the steak. So, let's see, it's been 4 minutes. I'll wait. See, this is a hard wait right here because you want to cut this thing open and fucking go crazy on it. But It's good to wait. It's good to wait. It's good to wait. Give it 30 more seconds. And just the fat. All right, folks. I'm gonna go ahead and cut into this. See how I did. Oh, I got good news. Oh, got real good news for you. Got good news, folks. That's what we call wall-to-wall pink, baby. And again, how did I tell what its doneness was? Well, I've cooked a fair amount of steaks in my day, so I've gotten to know kind of what that feels like. For one, I mean, look at this. No gray band, all pink, wall-to-wall pink, dripping in its own fat, dripping in butter with thyme and parsley and garlic powder. Oh, folks, this might be one of my all-time greats right here. So now I will show you the steak briefly and kind of show you the meat. Look at that. That's what we want. Do you see any gray? There's no gray. You see that? No gray. Beautiful. Folks, this is what it should look like. Okay? This is what your steak should look like. You see all this fat? I'm about to mop that up while I'm eating. Take our first bite. Start off with this little guy down here. Oh my God. Might be the best steak I've ever cooked. Holy shit. We did everything right, folks, and this is what we got. So this was a complete win. The only ambiguous thing here is knowing the doneness. Before I started making this, I should have taken more time to talk about that. But yes, you can use a meat thermometer, but I'll tell you what, like the best steaks I've ever had, I eyeballed. I don't know why that is. Like, I don't use meat thermometers, and I don't think you should either. This steak is a 10 out of 10. I would recommend this steak to anyone. This steak is a blessing. Doneness, like I said, I've kind of described it as much as I could. Oh, I got to turn off this fan. I've kind of described it. It's you get a sense of it over time. So just start cooking steaks, and like I said, you want it when you press down on it, you want it to have a little give but not too much give. And you'll start to learn where that is over time.